I've had the C70 for just over a year now, and I think that I've come to the conclusion that I'm probably never leaving Canon, as depressing as that sounds for a lot of people. This is the review. Before I bought the C70, I owned the Canon C200, and for a long time, the C200 was my dream camera. I looked at that camera online for years, and I knew once I was able to purchase it, that was gonna be the camera that I bought, and I thought that I was gonna stick with that for a long time. I had the C200 for about a year, and it was a lot of things that I loved about that camera, but ultimately its downfall for me were its negatives kind of outweighed the way that I like to shoot things. I love the RAW on the Canon C200. I thought it was really clean. The dynamic range out of it was really nice. I love the built-in ND filters, the XLR inputs, the SDI. It was a lot of things going for it. But the way that I learned that I like to shoot stuff is I'm actually traveling a lot. And the C200 made it incredibly difficult for me to travel with it just because of its overall size. Another thing that I didn't really anticipate being such a problem on the C200 was the size of files. I dealt with it. I bought additional SSDs. The RAW was okay to edit with. It actually wasn't that bad, but I think the size overall just was the thing that didn't really work out for me. It was cool when I was shooting locally, but I could never really travel with this thing without it being a huge hassle. The C70 fixes a lot of the issues that I had with the C200 and actually improved on a lot of the things that I enjoyed as well. It's small enough for me to be able to travel with it and not be a hassle. Like I can throw this into a backpack, the same backpack that I put my R6 into, but I also enjoy it because it's kind of big because I like to handheld shoot a lot of the times. That additional weight actually does help me out on the side of handheld shooting because it gives me less micro jitters. It gives me more of an organic cinema style feel for the footage. That's just kind of hard to explain. I know a lot of people don't really understand that, but the size of it I find is kind of perfect. It's not too small, it's not too big, it's a perfect middle ground. And I actually love that a lot about the C70. This thing has a ton of different buttons on it. Most of them are labeled, but you can actually adjust these buttons on this camera to shoot with it however you love shooting. I love the fact that you can literally program any button on this camera to whatever you wanted to and shoot with it however you like to shoot. I know this camera in and out. I can literally use it without being able to see what the buttons are. I love the fact that the buttons are labeled. So if I hand this over to my homie Nick or my homie Tino to do behind the scenes or get some cinema stuff for me, they also know what's going on because these buttons are labeled. I think the customization options on this camera are incredible. It really does play a big part into the usability aspect of it. I find that the image quality on the C70 is really nice. It's a really good dynamic range. If y'all shooting out in the middle of the day, you're not gonna have super blown out highlights and super crushed blacks. The Canon C-Log2 picture profile does a really good job of giving you a nice cinematic roll off from highlights to shadows. And the image is nice and detailed. It's not overly sharpened or overly processed looking like some of the mirrorless or DSLR cameras on the market. I find that it's nice and detailed, but it's still soft. I just love the way it looks. And the image quality is a big plus on this camera. You're familiar with the primary frame rates like 24 frames per second, 30 frames per second, 60 frames per second, 120 frames per second. But this camera allows you to shoot in between those different primary frame rates to give you a more stylized choice when it comes to filming. So if you want to do 36 frames per second, or if you want to do 48 frames per second, or if you want to do 72 frames per second. These are all things that you can do. You can kind of go in between those different primary frame rates. And it's great, especially for like stylistic choices for music videos. If you want to do like the slow motion performances, but their mouth is still on beat with the song that they're performing, this works wonders for this. Aside from those variable frame rates, this actually has a lot of really good options for slow motion as well. I believe that this camera can do up to 180 frames per second at specific resolutions, but in 4K, it does really crisp 120 frames per second footage, and I like it a lot. I know a lot of people didn't really look into this camera or consider this camera because it was a Super 35 sensor. A lot of people feel like if they're spending this much money, they want to jump to full frame. And even though I don't personally care about it being Super 35. I actually prefer Super 35 in a lot of instances. The speed booster option for this camera not only gives you closer to a full frame field of view, but it gives you one big benefit on top of that as well. If you use regular EF lenses like I do, like I already had a solid EF lens collection, the speed booster also gives you an additional stop of light on a lot of lenses, which is great. So with my 16-35 that I use a lot, the lowest aperture on it is f2.8, but if I use it on the speed booster, it can go all the way down to an f2, which is great. It allows me to get additional light into my sensor so I don't have to lift my ISO higher in a lot of different scenarios. The speed booster option is really great. I think that if you are thinking about buying a C70, you almost have to buy the speed booster. I feel like if you don't, you're not really utilizing it to its fullest potential. The speed booster is really good for this. I haven't used an external ND filter in so long. And honestly, after using built-in ND filters, I don't know if I can ever go back to a camera that doesn't have them. They're so convenient. It's minimal color shift. You don't have to think about bringing an external filter. And then if you want to put an additional filter on the end of your lens, you're not stacking filters. I know sometimes when you stack filters, you get really weird reflections. It's just all around plus, man. The built-in ND filters on this camera are a huge benefit to it. They're great because they give you additional audio options that are a lot higher quality than just using a regular input from like a DSLR or mirrorless camera. Really like that about this camera. I was doing some BTS documentary work down in Texas, and I just love the fact that I can use my Rode NTG4 Plus shotgun microphone on my camera, get really quality audio straight into the camera. It's actually insane to me that I can get this high quality footage straight to an SD card and not have the footage be massive. I put two 128 gigabyte SD cards into this camera and I can literally shoot all day. I shot all day doing this behind the scene documentary that I did for Epidemic Sound for one of their music video shoots. And it's just a breeze, man. I love that. I love the fact that I can kind of condense all my memory down to just SD cards. I don't have to think about bringing SD cards and then bringing CF Express and then bringing CF and all of these other options. I love the fact that the file sizes are very small compared to like the C200, and they just go straight to SD cards. Like that's just a plus plus. I love that. Whether you have the battery that comes with this camera or you decide to get one of the bigger options like I use with D-Tap out on it, the battery on this camera lasts forever. I took two batteries with me to Texas. I keep talking about Texas, but I literally was shooting all day. I didn't have to think about my battery life. It's an external power option for my monitor, the one that I have specifically. I love the battery life on this camera. I think that it's really good. So those are the things that I love about this camera. It's probably some more, but I don't really want to take this too far. Let's talk about the things that I don't really love about this camera. It's not horrible, but it's not good at all. It's like super middle of the road. It's like, okay, it's all right. It's not that great. I know that Sony right now is killing the low light game. If you have like a FX3 or FX6, like the low light is incredible. You can go into like the 10,000 mark beyond and just get super crispy footage. But I find that with the C70, I wouldn't want to shoot on this camera past like 6400. Maybe you can clean it up in post with a denoiser, but the low light on this camera is just not that good. The autofocus is great when situations are optimal for it, like me sitting down doing this talking head, or if I'm just outdoors and the lighting's nice. But if the lighting is a little bit questionable, the autofocus is also questionable. This isn't like super lightning fast blistering autofocus that you can trust in every scenario. So you have to really consider what you need. If it is vital that you get focused in a shot with a lot happening and not so great lighting, you might want to just take over and do manual, because this thing kind of be all over the place. But in scenarios like this, it's perfect. It's gonna work every single time. And the fact that you can do face only autofocus is great. So if I jump out of this frame with face only on, it's not gonna hunt for the background to try to find my face. It's gonna literally stop until it recognizes my face or another face in the scene, which is really good. Coming from the C200, that's something that I really miss. I think that SDI connection is just so much better. It's way better than HDMI. I don't love the fact that this doesn't have SDI. And the last and final thing that I don't love about this camera is the body design. I don't really like it. It's very similar to like a DSLR, but it's also really awkward. I don't love this. This side of it is like stationary. It's kind of awkward when you want to get down low angles if you don't have a top handle on. It's just not the best bare bones body design. I don't really love it. I wish it was a way that Canon figured out how to keep the body design consistent with the C200 line, with that handle that you can adjust on the side and stuff like that. But that's it. Those are the things that I like and don't like. I want to really talk about why I'm never going to be leaving Canon, or why I don't really see myself leaving Canon in the near future anyways. Cameras right now, cameras aren't really exciting. Camera technology is kind of plateaued. You know what I mean? We got these really specialty cameras like 360 cameras that are continuing to pop up that have crazy different things that they're doing, and we're getting new drones and stuff and all that's tight. But when it comes to cameras, I feel like once the R5, the A7S III, the FX6, the C70 hit, we kind of just been chilling. And that's cool. I love that. That's not a bad thing at all. I think it's great. And I think it's incredible that every single camera right now that's out is pretty much good. And that plays a big part into the fact that I don't need to buy another camera. I don't need to buy another camera, and I love this camera, and I don't see myself purchasing another camera anytime soon. This camera does everything great. The image quality is incredible. The convenience factor of it is nice. It's not massive. It's a perfect size. It's a lot of things going for this camera that I just love. And I don't really need RAW, and I don't really need all these different crazy codecs and huge video files and RAW and all this other stuff. Even though this camera can do RAW now, technically, I don't need it. It's cool. I think that this is a perfect middle ground for me, and I don't really see myself going anywhere anytime soon. And with that being said, I will be testing out new cameras out there on the market. Just because I'm in the place of YouTube, it's cool to test out new technology and check out new cameras and be able to get reviews to you guys about different cameras that are out there on the market. But in terms of purchasing a camera and owning it, I don't see myself purchasing or buying another camera anytime soon. This thing does everything great, and I enjoy it. With me talking about new cameras though, do me a favor, head out to the comment section. What camera right now would you like to see me use or review or talk about? I like to try new stuff. It gets views, you guys enjoy it, it's fun, it's cool to get out of my comfort zone. I would love to know if you guys have any cameras that you would like me to check out. I still got the Z9 footage coming really soon that I shot the music video on, so be tuned for that. That's gonna be coming really soon, but that's that. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to drop it a like, subscribe to the channel if you're new here. I'm out though, peace.